Welcome to Module 4, the final module in AI prompting for professionals. This is prompting for presentations. We've covered writing, analysis, and communication. Now we're tackling the thing most professionals dread, building a compelling presentation from scratch. Whether you're presenting to a client, a board, your team, or a conference room full of stakeholders, this module will show you how to use AI to go from a blank page to a polished, audience-ready presentation faster than you ever thought possible. So here's what we're covering. We'll start with why presentations are uniquely hard to prompt for, and that one mindset shift that makes everything easier. Then we'll build the presentation prompting framework, including a powerful narrative structure called SCQA. We'll apply all of it to 4 real person scenarios: a client proposal, a board update, a team briefing, and an executive summary. And we'll close with the fastest way to go from rough notes to presenter ready slides. So, as always, before the framework, let's talk about why presentations are different from everything else we've covered. A presentation isn't a document with a beginning and an end. It's a performance, really. The structure isn't just about covering the right topics, it's about leading an audience through a logical arc that ends where you want them. That means AI needs more upfront context than for writing or analysis. The biggest mistake people make is typing, make me a presentation about our Q3 results and hoping for something useful. What you get is some generic bullet points where you need a structured brief that gives AI the goal, the audience, and key messages, and the desired outcome. And so once you have that, AI becomes extraordinarily useful. So we don't want to be like the ones on the left, what most people do. We don't want anything generic, and we don't want anyone spending hours fixing a structure or just having a list. That's Nobody likes any presentation that feels like that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with a really strong brief. We're going to define our goals, audiences, and key messages, and we're going to make it really structured before we do anything else. And then AI is able to fill in that story that you've really led it to. So here's the framework for presentation prompts. And it's a little different from the others, but still generally the same. Instead of a prompt framework, we're going to start with a presentation brief. So 5 pieces of information that set up every prompt that follows. So our goal: what is the presentation trying to achieve? This is not update the board, but specifically something like get approval for 200K budget increase. The audience: who's in the room and what do they care about? A board cares about risk and return. A client cares about outcome and value. A team cares about their role and what's changing. So we need to think through that. Key messages: the 2 to 3 things they absolutely must leave believing. Our structure, so how the presentation is going to be organized. And this is where the SCQA comes in, which we will get to. And then format is how long is it? How many slides should it be? How much detail are we going to go in? And whether or not you need speaker's notes. So with that, let's look at the SCQA format. SCQA stands for situation, complication, question, and answer. And it's one of the most effective structures for professional presentations because it mirrors how people actually process information. You start by establishing shared context that everyone agrees on, the situation. Then you introduce a complication, so something that's changed, like a challenge, a gap, or a risk. That complication naturally raises a question in the audience mind, and your presentation is going to be the answer to that question. This structure works for board presentations, client proposals, project briefings, and executive updates because it leads with context, creates urgency, and positions your content as the solution. When you give this framework to AI and tell it how to build your outline using the SCQA, The result is a presentation that flows logically and feels purposeful, not just a list of slides. So here's where you can really see the full presentation prompt and get the full picture. So you might write our goal, get board approval for a $150,000 investment in client services technology. Our audience is a 6-person board with a strong financial focus and a low risk appetite. The 3 key messages are the ROI is clear and achievable within 18 months. The implementation risk is manageable in the plan we've developed, and the cost of delaying this investment is greater than the cost of making it. We're going to structure the presentation using the SCQA framework. Target length, 8 slides. Language should be executive level, confident, data informed, and concise. Include speaker notes for each slide. And so that prompt is going to produce a complete, logically structured outline you can build from directly. So let's look at how this applies to some real life scenarios you might be in. So the first use case is a client proposal presentation. One of the most common and highest stakes presentations in professional services. And here's how you'd prompt for it. Build an 8-slide presentation outline for a proposal to a mid-sized manufacturing client. We are recommending they outsource their accounting firm or accounting function to our firm. Our goal is to get buy-in from the CFO and VP of operations to move to the next step. Audience financially savvy, operationally focused, skeptical of change. Key messages: outsourcing reduces risk and cost. Our firm has direct industry experience. Onboarding is faster and easier than they expect. And then we're going to use that SCQA structure. And then language is going to be professional, direct, outcome focused, and we want to include speaker notes. So notice the key messages are framed around what the client cares about. It's not around what we do. It's what they're going to care the most about, and that's what we want the AI to focus on. And so that's the most important calibration in a proposal presentation. And so AI is going to mirror the framing you give it. So if we were to say we can do X, Y, Z for them, and we say really nothing about their CFO and their VP of operations, and we don't tell the AI that they're skeptical of change or anything like that, it's just going to say, here's why we're great and here's why you should pick us, which is what a lot of client presentations are, where this one's really going to take you a step further because it's focused on the client. And that's what you need to do when you're prompting, is think about what this client is going to want and what they're going to focus on. Board and leadership updates are where a lot of professionals lose their audience, usually by leading with data instead of an insight. Here's how to fix that with AI. You'd prompt, build a 6-slide board presentation for a Q3 financial results update. Our goal is to give the board a clear picture of performance and flag 2 items requiring discussion. Audience is board members with strong financial literacy who want the headline first. And so that's really key there to tell the AI they want the headline first. They don't necessarily need the data around it. They want to know what's going on at the beginning. Our key messages are going to be, we finished Q3 at 94% of revenue target. Expense management was strong. 1 client concentration risk requires a decision. And we're going to use the SCQA format. Situation is our Q3 performance context. Complication is the client concentration issue. Question is, what should we do about it? And the answer is our recommended action. So the language, we want to be executive, data informed, action oriented is a really good tone to use. And then you can have it include speaker notes if you'd like. And so what you get is a presentation that starts with the headlines and builds to a decision, which is exactly what the board wants. And so this is where, when we think about the audience, your audience being a board is so different than your client because the board wants a so what? What does this mean for us? As opposed to a whole bunch of data and kind of extra fluff in there, which is what you give a client. So this one is very important to think about and to remember, especially that SCQA formatting. Internal team presentations have a different success metric. The team needs to leave knowing exactly what's changing, why it matters, and what they need to do differently. How many times have you gone to a meeting and kind of been like, all right, so what was the point of that? Or that could have been an email because you didn't really leave knowing exactly what you needed to do. You just kind of got some information thrown at you. So here's how to prevent that. So a prompt you can use is build a 5-slide presentation for an internal team briefing on a new client onboarding process we're rolling out next month. The goal is to make sure the team understands the new process and feels confident about the transition. Your audience is going to be an 8-person accounting team, mixed experience levels, and they're used to the old process. And that's really key right there for change management. They're used to that old process. And maybe we can add in how they feel about changing. Maybe we know that we have some people on the team that have been there for 20 years doing the old process and they don't like change, right? We can add things like that in there to our prompt. Key messages, the new process is faster and more consistent. Your role in it is clear and straightforward, and support is available during this transition. So we're thinking about what this team may be worried about and how it impacts them. And so that's why we're adding in those key messages of, hey, it's going to be better for you. Here's how. And then for our SCQA, we have situation is our current onboarding challenges. Complication is client feedback is starting to show friction. Question is how do we fix it? And the answer is the new process. We want our language to be direct, reassuring, practical, and we don't want any jargon. And so the language instruction for reassuring is really doing the important work here. It can shape the whole tone of the presentation. And same thing, if you don't like what you're getting back, if it feels too complicated or feels too not what you're looking for, you can use those negative prompts. Say, you know, don't sound apologizing, don't sound aggressive, don't sound passive aggressive, right? You can always change these, but this is why using language and tone do matter in your prompts. Speaker notes deserve their own use case because they're often done wrong. They're either too long and dense, and so they're just not useful, or they're too thin to actually help. And so here's how to prompt for them specifically. Once you have your slide outline, you can prompt for each slide in the following outline, write speaker notes that I will use to present, not text to put on the slide. Notes should be conversational and natural, written the way I would actually say it, not the way I would write it. Each slide's note should be 3 to 5 sentences, cover the key points of that slide, and include one transition sentence to the next slide. Avoid bullet points, write in full sentences as if I'm talking to the audience. That one instruction, write the way I would say it, not write it, produces speaker notes that are actually useful at the podium. Without it, you get these dense paragraphs and they read like a slide and they're very generic. And so saying, hey, write as a human would, write as I would, can be incredibly beneficial and is something that I think speaker notes can be helpful. They just don't always feel like it. So let's talk about the fastest workflow for going from raw notes to a presenter ready deck. 4-step process. Step 1, paste your rough notes into a prompt and ask AI to identify the key messages and suggest an SCQA structure. Step 2, review and confirm that the structure makes sense and works with what you're going for. This is the most important step because if the arc is wrong, everything past this step is not going to be great, and it's going to be built on a really shaky foundation. So make sure it makes sense to you and it's what you're looking for. Step 3, use the confirm structure to generate the full slide-by-slide outline with header text and bullet points. Step 4, generate those speaker notes. The key discipline here is doing structure before content. Most people want to go straight into the slides, but if the narrative arc isn't right, you spend more time fixing it than the time you actually saved. So get the structure right first, and everything else will follow generally pretty quickly. Here's what we covered in Module 4. Presentations need a brief before they need a prompt. Give AI the goal, audience, key messages, structure, and format. Use SCQA to build a narrative arc that actually leads somewhere. Lead with what your audience cares about and get the structure right before filling out the slides. And write speaker notes that sound like you speaking, not writing, and not generic writing. And so that is Module 4, and that wraps up the series. Congratulations, you've completed AI Prompting for Professionals. Over 4 modules, you've built a complete toolkit for using AI in your professional work. Writing, analysis, communication, presentations, you now have a framework for each. The most important thing you can do next is to use them. Start with a scenario that comes up most often at work. Build one prompt using the framework. Refine it, make it yours. The professionals who get the most out of AI aren't the ones who know the most about it. They're the ones who practice. Thanks for learning with LearnCPE, and we'll see you in our next course.